Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez didn't win her election, not in a normal way at least. She did what's called primarying, and it's what she called it. These Democrats, these progressives, know that in certain districts, there's no way anyone other than a Democrat will win. So what they do is they go into districts where there are long-time serving incumbents and then pull the rug out from under them with what they call primarying. Essentially, with New York's 14th district, I believe it's the 14th, where Ocasio-Cortez is representing, she challenged Joe Crowley to a primary match. He didn't think he could lose to some random progressive Democratic socialist. She got tons of support from the Young Turks and from other alternative personalities and activists, and she only got about 15,000 votes in a district of around 750,000. Joe Crowley didn't get that many. He got about 12,000 primary votes. Why? He didn't take it seriously. Ocasio-Cortez won her district by getting a tiny, tiny fraction of the voters. And then once she was the Democratic candidate, she kept saying across the board she won the election, when she didn't. But they know primarying works, and she has threatened other Democrats with this. Well, what ends up happening? When you don't have the support of your party, and you got in through sneaky means, it's not surprising then we're hearing some Democrats are floating the idea of a primary challenge for Ocasio-Cortez. There was a period where I would believe that she could have lost in a primary. I don't think that's true right now. I mean, it's possible. But the thing is, when she first won, people weren't happy about it. Some people, actually Cortez herself, were accusing Joe Crowley of trying to mount a third-party challenge to her. But she didn't have that many followers, a couple 100,000. Okay? Today she has millions, something like 2.5 million followers. She's way too famous at this point to lose in a primary for the most part. However, people in, like, the primary turnout is really, really, really low. So she would have to be extremely active to try and win. And here's the thing. If the Democrats do present a primary challenge for Cortez, all they have to do is not gaffe so much and they could probably win. So imagine this. Democrats find a more moderate, but not super, like not centrist, but just a more moderate young person who understands the memes and the cool culture and can actually challenge Cortez on her facts. They'll be able to run circles around her. And then they'll have a candidate with party support to replace Cortez. Now, I'm not surprised to see Democrats want to get rid of her. She's challenging Nancy Pelosi. She protested Nancy Pelosi's office, and she broke from her party and voted against reopening the government. I mean, props to her for standing up for what she promised to do, which was abolish ICE, when all the other progressive Democrats who claimed they aren't voting in that direction. You got to give it to her for at least, standing by what she claimed she would do. So I'll give her respect for that. I think it's a silly position, but she said she would, and then she stood by what she said she was going to do, and thus she was the only Democrat to vote no on reopening the government. Well, let's read what they say. Cortez has infuriated colleagues by aligning with a progressive outside group that's threatening to primary entrenched Democrats. Now some of those lawmakers are turning the tables on her and are discussing recruiting a primary challenger to run against the social media sensation. I also want to point out my video from the other day. Pew Research shows most Democrats want to go more moderate. She is a huge threat in 2020. Seriously, she may be, look, I'm not trying to overstate her power, but she's extremely influential. And she is going to push many people, many of her followers, in a more far-left direction, which is at odds with the majority of the Democrats. It's 53% of Democrats who want more moderate policy, 40% who want more liberal policy. She's going to push, okay, I made a video about this about a week ago saying Democrats are being split by far-left extremism. She's a Democratic socialist. While she doesn't push some of the same rhetoric we see from overt Democratic socialists, she's a card-carrying member. Why would I assume her motivations are different from the organization she is a member of? And what happens then is she is creating a fractured sect of Democrats that are at odds with the core party, and this is going to cause huge problems for presidential runs. So think about this. Pew says, 53% want more moderate candidates. This is why, okay, so you may not also know that Howard Schultz, former Starbucks CEO, is announcing a centrist independent run. This is why Republicans are laughing and Democrats are freaking out. Because a centrist will split the Democrats because more than half of Democrats want to go moderate. And Cortez is fracturing the Democrats in the other direction. The Democrats are splitting so far that they're not going to be able to mount a unified coalition to go up against Republicans who are, for the most part, in agreement with each other. They say, at least one House Democrat has been privately urging members of the New York delegation to recruit a local politician from the Bronx or Queens to challenge Cortez. What I have recommended to the New York delegation is that you will find her a primary opponent and make her a one-term congressperson. The Democratic lawmaker who requested anonymity told The Hill, "You've got numerous council people and state legislators who've been waiting 20 years for that seat. I'm sure they can find numerous people who want that seat in that district." The New York delegation has eyed Cortez with skepticism ever since last summer, when the 29-year-old self-described Democratic socialist shocked the political world and defeated then Rep. Joseph Crowley in what many thought would be a sleepy primary race. Crowley, a Queens power broker and affable House Democrat caucus chairman, had been considered a possible future speaker. He was the fourth in line, so like the fourth highest Democrat. Many New York and congressional Black Caucus lawmakers were also furious with Cortez after a recent Politico report stated she had the grassroots group aligned with her, Justice Democrats, were considering backing a primary challenge to fellow New York Democrat Hakeem Jeffries, a Black Caucus member and establishment insider who succeeded Crowley as caucus chairman. Basically, Ocasio-Cortez is aligned with an external non-establishment group. I don't have a lot. Look, I'll say this. I was very, very happy to see these establishment crony Democrat types being stripped from power. But I also recognize why those people are now fighting back. I'm not a big fan of most of them, and admittedly, I'll say this, I much prefer Cortez over the establishment crony types. Listen, if I had to make a choice between Hillary Clinton's people and Cortez, I am going to hands down high-five Cortez. I think she's silly. I think she's made tons of gaffes. For sure, there's a lot of things she doesn't know what she's talking about. But I much prefer a young upstart who's idealistic and can gain more experience and maybe better understand the system than the crony. Listen, there's so much wrong with the establishment Democrats, how they stole the primary from Bernie. Isn't it weird? I'm not going to play the game of conspiracy theories, but the Clinton Foundation taking in hundreds of millions of dollars, just so strange as to why so many foreign and special interests would fund her foundation to such an extreme degree. I wonder why they would do that. Whether or not you want to accuse the Clinton Foundation of taking bribes for Hillary or whatever, you got to recognize that friends of her foundation are friends of hers, and that will bleed off. I don't like that. I don't. I much prefer a new face with different ideas challenging these established crony Democrats. I don't like them. I'm not saying I'm a big fan of Cortez. I liked a lot of her platform early on, but I think she's showing herself to be just bombastic, overly emotional, silly. She's doing a lot of the things that Trump does that I also don't like. Plain and simple, right? But let's read on. Cortez and Justice Democrats have denied the report, but the group of insurgent progressives has vowed to target centrist Rep. Henry Culler in Texas and is eyeing other potential 2020 targets. She made a live stream about this. How could she deny it? Okay, maybe the specifics. She did a live stream where she talked about Justice Democrats and how they were planning on primarying other establishment Democrats to strip them. So I kind of like that. I kind of like that a lot. I don't want to see far left individuals who don't understand how the economy works take over. My position is a, social liberal. It's a center left position. I believe that government and healthcare can make sense. I believe that government and education can make sense. However, my position starts with one of the things I see with a lot of conservatives is the idea that, government healthcare, government education, all these things failed. It's like, well, hold on, right? We need to weed out the corruption. Welfare systems make sense. Unemployment systems make sense. But we have to make sure people don't abuse it. Plain and simple. I think a social safety net and these programs are a great thing. I believe regulation is extremely important. I believe in a mixed economy, not, overt laissez-faire capitalism. Thus, I find myself typically aligned with more centrist, left-leaning policy. Cortez has some of those more populist things that I like. But she does have some far-left ideas that I don't think can be implemented. However, I don't know the full numbers, but as I've pointed out before, I think if we stop the foreign wars, which basically most people on the libertarian spectrum, left or right, agree with, maybe then we will have lots of extra funding for great programs to strengthen our infrastructure, strengthen our education system and our healthcare system. I also want to point out, when it comes to education, it's corrupt to the core. I think our public schools are in dire needs of reform and just stripping corruption out of these systems. And before any of these social policies are put in play, I think my first priority would be just like reform, like get rid of the corruption. I'm fairly confident that if we could figure out how to strip corruption from these government systems, you'd have a lot of conservatives being like, oh, okay, that's okay, right? Like, what's more important? Having boots on the ground in a Middle Eastern country for this perpetual war on terror, or whatever we want to call it, conquest for the Qatar-Turkey pipeline type issues, or we can take the funds that already exist, no new taxes, and allocate that to various infrastructure projects, which could hire construction workers and contractors and fix our bridges and roads. I like that idea. That's why I'm not too... I think Cortez's Green New Deal goes too far. It's like as far left as you can get, and she's a doomsayer, like screaming the world's going to end. Seriously, she said that. But I do think there's a way we can do some kind of New Deal if we stop the foreign wars. But look, I'm not a policy expert. I'm not an economic expert. What I can say is, when it comes to issues like this, the Democrats trying to remove Cortez, it's a big story. I'm not going to read through all of it. But basically, we know what they're doing. We know what the far left is trying to do to infiltrate and shift the Democratic Party. They've found an exploit. They're taking advantage of that exploit, and it's going to work. So the mainstream Democrats are going to use the same tactic against her. But I'll say this. It's a good thing all around. This is what primary races are for. I believe if we have more elections and more contenders and more competition in our electoral process, it's only a good thing. So Cortez should welcome a challenge in the primary, because if she really is the representative of her district, they will vote for her. And if they don't vote for her, that's democracy. Okay? She won the primary race. It was an exploit. Well, you know what? The game is on. Let's see what happens. But again, final thought, it's not surprising to see Democrats fighting back. I'm not a big fan of establishment Democrats, but I think it's healthy to see this competition. So stick around. The next video will be on my main channel, youtube.com/timcast at 4 p.m. I will see you there.